Chronicles of Earth 9 presents Star Trek Online. Welcome, I'm Agamemnon. This is Star Trek Online. It's a Federation story. Today's episode of Star Trek Online is brought to you by the PS4, PlayStation 4. The previous episode was shot from the PC version of the game, and I thought it would be cool that we mix the two games in together. And these characters, we took our three main characters from the PC and I moved them over to the PS4. The PlayStation version of the game came out a few years ago. I forget exactly when, but at first I was kind of against playing it, but then as I got a PlayStation 4, I started changing my mind on it. And on the PC version, I used a lifetime subscription, which was like $300 when I got it. And on this version, it's a free-to-play account. When the game first came out, it wasn't free-to-play. It wasn't until year 2 that they converted it over to the free-to-play system, which is what you see now. The first year that the game was out, or a year and a half, the game was owned by Atari, and then they sold the game to Perfect World. And Perfect World, that's where all the big transition took place over at Cryptic. And this game was one of the ones that were converted over, and I think this and Neverwinter was actually free to play from the very beginning. It was still in development when the whole Perfect World thing occurred, and I think Neverwinter, because it was from the ground up free to play system, worked out very well for Cryptic. Champions, I think, is a great game that Cryptic makes that should have come over to console, but for some reason they decided not to do that. I think it would greatly improve its population if it made it over to console. And then this game, I think, ports very well to PS4, and I really wanted to make this video because I've run into a couple people that have been playing this on console, at least the PS4, and I wanted to show them how you could actually do a roleplay layer on top of this game, which really, I think, improves the game tremendously. If you primarily play this as a raider type of player, where you're in and out and all you do is combat, game can grow stale for you because it's sort of repetitive. But with roleplaying, you add a layer to it, and you get to create a story with the character, and then you interact with other characters. And the way I designed my roleplay system, and it works in this game, it works in Star Trek Online, it works in Star Wars The Old Republic, and you can use it in World of Warcraft too. We add dice rolling to the game, because the game actually has a dice rolling feature, emote. And if the game doesn't have a dice rolling feature, then you can easily get digital dice. And since you're playing online these days on Discord, it's quite easy to show the results of the dice rolling. But in our system, one player acts as the game master, referee, and in case of disputes, you have multiple game masters if people want to do that. And then with Star Trek Online, the way it works is one character basically is the star of the show, and then they're the ones who's going to like select all the missions, and everyone else will essentially just be a supporting character. And how you usually fill in the roles is, if the person, say, is an engineer, in Star Trek Online, you have three main roles. You have engineer, tactical, and science. You can also have a civilian. If you don't want to play a military person, you can do that too in a game. Like a lot of Ferengi people tend to not be military. They tend to be traders and stuff. You can do that. But say your captain is a tactical guy, then you generally pair them up with a supporting cast of an engineer, and someone plays a science. First, that way it gives you a chance to work on alts. It gives you a reason to have alts in the game. And I think you use more of the game as a role player. In role-playing, you play the game a little slower, as you see in the first video. This video where we're actually walking around the stage. And the first video on the PC is sort of an example of solo role-playing, where you're reading the dialogue to yourself. You're enjoying the experience and so forth. I moved the screen over to the bigger screen so I could read the writing. If you hear any music in the background, that's our next door neighbor. They're blasting their stereo. It's Saturday here, and today's recording is being recorded on the 30th of January. And the video clip was recorded on the 22nd of January, 2021. And so here I'm setting up you only have 3 channels on the PS4. Yeah, you can have as many as you want on the PC version. So I'm going to set this up as a subspace, which is all the open communication. You filter it out so that you can read it, you color code it, and then you can talk on the different channels. You use your R2, but when you open up your chat and you use your R2, L2 buttons, it moves between the channels for you. And then we're just going to go in there and take the colors that are there. On the PC one, I have my own color code system. But you just need to set the second tab up as RP, and the other one as subspace, and the other one for combat. And that way, if you're RPing with people, it's easy to go to the RP tab and filter out the essential stuff you need, like the NPC talking, mission dialogue, that kind of stuff. And makes for a better experience. Now, in the more recent years of Star Trek Online, they have spoken dialogue, which is pretty good. Voiceover actors, which has been early in the game. They didn't really have that. They had it to a limited extent, but somewhere around year 2, Cryptic embraced voiceovers, and I think the technology became more available at the time too. It's back in 2011, 2012 timeframe, and they sort of went with it. I've noticed as I've been going through this on the PS4, a lot of the old missions, they've updated a lot of the dialogue scenes and a lot of the animation cinematics have been updated, so that's kind of cool. Now, my PC is only a dual-core i3 processor, so I think the graphics on the PC version for our series is not as good as what the PS4. The PS4 has a better graphic adapter, which is okay. I think if you see the game in sort of a basic graphic, if you have a more advanced graphic system, then it's just going to look better. But the core functions and basic functions of the game are still there. They don't change with your graphic card. But saying our neighbor is playing music. This kind of doing this as a test to see how the background music is filtered out, and it should just come across as sort of mumbling because it's in a way background. As long as I speak at a higher level, the mic's closer to me, it should filter out pretty decently. And then the game music should overcome that, I think. This is our character, Clyde Anistra. If you watched the first episode, you know she's our main character from our SF-41 Black Sheep's fleet. If we can pull a bunch of role players and make a fleet in the PS4, I would love that, because then when I would be managing the fleet, but the fleet gives you a whole better game experience if you're a role player. It gives you a lot of tools that just enhances your ability as role players. Now, I'm going to at some point invest the money to become a lifetime subscriber holder in this game. I think the lifetime subscription is probably the better way to go, but the month to month is decent too. However, if you're going to get the lifetime, I would do it on the PC side because you have a lot more tools that you're supposed to. Now we're just resupplying our batteries. Starship batteries have to be constantly resupplied in the field. Now our ship isn't readily wealthy in this version, so we got to play like a poor person. Our character on the other side, they're a little more wealthier. They have 10 years of wealth built up. So a little bit more freedom to make decisions. Now, originally when this game started, they didn't have these sliders. You had to click the button one at a time if you wanted to buy multiple stuff. It's really annoying. And somewhere along the line, developers said, let's make so they could just type it in. That would be a good idea. Excellent idea. And the community loved it. No one complained on the forums. Everybody was happy. This is the USS Aki. It's a deep space science vessel. It's actually a captain. How you know something is a captain vessel or a tier 5, tier 4 vessel is the number of councils that it has, usually. And then the bridge officer stations is a way to figure it out. But in the free play system, ideally, if you're going the free ship route, you want to get a T5, and then you want to enhance it to a T5U at some point. And then you can enhance it to a T5X. But as you grind through the game and you can start collecting dilithium, you need to slowly convert that over to Zen, and then that will allow you to, over time, build up the necessary funds to buy your T6 ship, which I would do that. I'm trying to get in the habit of buying Zen once a week, or as opposed to once a month. And I think you get a better pricing that way. Although in the video you're going to see we do it on a daily basis. Now through this series, the way we recorded this series, on the PlayStation, I just turned the camera on and recorder on, and then that's how the clips come in. And but to make everything an hour-long episode, you might have to have half a clip and then in the next episode pick it up. But it's all going to be sorted out, so it's one clip but in serial order, the way the video was shot, so the story makes sense. And the way we're doing the roleplay story is you sort of start from the first episode. That's sort of what drives the story, and then between episodes you do sort of your dailies, missions to build up your crew, and then build up supplies, build up your money, energy credits, and build up your dilithium. And at a minimum, when you're doing your daily, you need to get up to about 8,000 ore a day, which is a lot of ore. But once you get a lot of your captain reputation done early in the game, your ability to get that 8,000 vastly improves. 8,000 is actually a lot, especially if you only play on a daily basis. Now, since we're recording this 4 days out of the week, so it's only a 4, but it's a 3-hour interval that we're recording, so that's 12 videos, 12 clips a week. And both on the PC and PS4. Now we changed our stream so that we moved Star Trek Online to the first game, and we moved World of Tanks to our weekend stuff we play offline. I think it makes for a better fit. And if we can grow our roleplay community both in this and DC, then you have a set time. It makes it easier for other people to kind of work around that set schedule. And then over time, build up a good roleplay community, mainly on the stream. So as we go forward, if you're interested in playing with us, we're trying to play on Twitch between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then DC Universe we play from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., which not a lot of people can make that schedule. It's a hard schedule. But I think the Star Trek Online one's the one that it's when a lot of people are sort of transitioning, especially on the East Coast, but in the West Coast of the U.S. You can kind of get that crowd. Here to upgrade her. Now, you can buy. I always use the small hypos and small charges. I got away from using the medium and large ones because I think they're just a waste of money. Even though they give you more bang for your buck. If you're out in the field and you want to resupply, the replicator only does the small. So I standardize using the small charges because it's what you can readily get in the field. And so having a supply, right, because then you'd always have to keep coming back, which as you get in the later parts of the game where you're more like deploying your ship, you're only coming back to port once a week. It's much more convenient just to use the replicator. And then so I tend to only use the small ones, but they're a little cheaper when you buy them at the starbase. The replicator tends to be a little bit more expensive. Now, if you have a Ferengi character, they get like a 20-25% discount when they buy from vendors or through the replicator because they have a negotiating ability. And that's why you see a lot of people when they do supply officers in this game, they normally use a Ferengi character. And the Klingons, at the time I'm recording, I don't believe have a character like that that has a speciality like that. Should be the Orions. Prior to the Ferengi being in Star Trek, that's what the Orions were in the series. And then they added a Ferengi later on. When I shot this video, I was slowly upgrading everybody's weaponry. Then as I got through it, I had to update it again. When you're below a Vice Admiral in this game, or Admiral upper half, the equipment that drops in the field will be for Admiral upper half, rear ammo upper half, and which is the Mark 12. And then if you go to a vendor, the most you can buy is a Mark 9. And then so at a minimum you need a Mark 9. And then to do most of the content you need the Mark 12. And then anything higher than that you have to make it yourself, and which is in the early days when you're setting up your command, you need to be focused on getting that research department developed, and it takes a long time to develop. You have to get the research, each one of those research and development fields, which there are many of them, you have to get it to a level 15, and before you can even start producing your own technology components, and that can take if you do it every day, it takes like a year to grind that up. So at a minimum, you should always be researching. And that gets you into the habit of researching and developing equipment. Because once you top out all your research, then at that point you'll be developing the manuals and technology, the stuff people use to upgrade. For the people that can't build that kind of stuff or don't have the time, you market that stuff inexpensively, and then they can buy the tech manuals and upgrade units, which you can market that on the exchange. And that actually brings in a pretty good income. So you basically convert your experience and your technical knowledge in a game and sell that to people. The exchange over the years has gotten really good in Star Trek. You got people that don't understand inflation and just pick a number off the top of their head, but they got the value of the item written on the item, and then it shows up on the exchange, so you know if something is grossly overpriced. There's no reason for anything to be selling at millions, although people sell it at that. There's no reason to do that in the game, other than it's just a guy who wants a quick million. But I think you should always sell the item at the suggested retail price, because it keeps for inflation, lowers inflation in the game. And our items tend to sell fast because we always sell at a really good price. And I do that in all games. Sell at a good price, it will tend to sell. But what people do is they buy the stuff from you and then they turn around and sell it for millions. Hey, that's a market. You know, we're the original manufacturer. When you manufacture stuff in this game, I believe it tracks who manufactured the item. So if they sell it or resell it, it goes through the history of the item, who manufactured it. In the early days, the pricing stuff was out of control, but I think over the 10 years, it's gotten reverted to normal. I think it's calmed down. People don't go crazy. I think you have a sporadic moments where people do it, but for the most part, people gotten better at pricing things in the game. I just price it whatever the value is written on the thing. That way I don't have to remember a lot of numbers. It's money. I just noticed something. I just noticed our mic on the computer, or the speakers were on, so I had to turn them off. That way it wouldn't echo on the mic. There, we're pulling out. As a role player, you always, if you look at the way the throttle is, it's done in fours. So that's 1/4 impulse, half impulse, 3/4 impulse, and 4/4, or not necessarily full impulse, but full impulse is where you hit the button and it travels faster. But it's still sublight speed. But when you're in the system. Now, if you're traveling as a fleet, you generally travel at a fleet speed, which is whatever the slowest vessel is. You move at whoever the main ship is, he'll set the fleet. And you fly in a coordinated way, and not everybody just running around like an idiot. And then it's done in a military way. name Steve McGarrett. Hawaii 5-0 there. And kind of circle back to the beginning of the clip. This character is Clytemnestra. She's a science officer in the United Federation of Planets. We're only going to have 3 characters on the PS4s as we shoot these episodes. The second character is Chrysothemis. She's Romulan, and then I have a Klingon character. She's actually Orion, and she's Caligania. Orion, and we'll be following her adventures, which they're characters on the PC, so we'll eventually be following them on the PC too as we get. This becomes a daily routine. Moving forward, to kind of get my schedule down today. Yesterday, I really been disciplining myself to stay on schedule, and everything's been happening. You're not overdoing things, you're not underdoing things. Everything's sort of in its own little hour structure. And the recording wise too, I've been trying to, even if I have like an hour to record, I will I call it stop and go editing. So you're editing videos on the go. So like when you're doing the voiceovers, you don't have to sit through an entire 2 hours to do it. You can just, if I only have 15 minutes to record, I'll put 15 minutes in and then come back and do it. And I'm trying to training my body to do that so that you're always into it, what you're doing. Okay, through the magic of modern day technology, I have left the recording and come back 24 hours later to start again. Trying to get used to editing in a way where, like, if you only have 30 minutes or an hour to do editing, you just do as much as you can with the time allotted. Stop, save it, come back the next day and pick it up. And rather than try to record it all in one session, which on our actual Wednesdays and Tuesdays where we have a lot of time to dedicate to that, that's practical. But from Friday to Tuesday morning or Monday evening, it's not very practical to do that because we're on our streaming schedule, and trying to develop new ways to get the editing done. And it's not mandatory that you get the editing done at any specific time frame, but I like being productive with my time. On one hand, with OCD, you're very schedule oriented, not necessarily to your schedule, but with me, I like everything. If you set a schedule, I like everything to work accordingly to schedule. What's the point of making a schedule if you don't use it, right? It'd be a waste of time, and hence a scheduling issue. But the ADHD part of me, which is impulsive, kind of loses track of things, and then it's very hard to stay on the schedule. So anyway, back to the recording. Going over the crew, their space skills. I'm looking over what needs to be developed here. I always like to develop my bridge crew where they all have the basic skills, and if you're unfamiliar with it, I'll slowly go through and explain it. And your bridge officers have 4 tiers of powers. They start with ensign, lieutenant, lieutenant commander, and commander. Now, if you're like in a Romulan, they call it other things. But they call it a centurion, sub-commander, and commander. And I forget what the lower staff officer is. And then Klingons call it warrior. They do the army system where you have like a major and a general, that kind of stuff. but still the relative same 4 tiers. And so when I staff up my people, I give them broad skills for the ensign, and that's the leftmost skill. And as you go right on that bridge officer thing, the skill becomes more specific. Now, all abilities in Star Trek Online is not a one-trick pony. There are many ways that you can use your power, but the basic 2 ways are you have an offensive way to use it and a defensive way to use it. And then through experience in using the power and how you modify that power is up to you. The underlying things that contribute to your abilities come from your captain skill tree and the gear you use, the equipment, the landing party gear, and so forth. When you go to the ground, the tricorder is what you use to for the captain's ability to have variable abilities, which is through the tricorder. That too requires a bit of a balance. Depending on how you now, back in the old days of Star Trek Online, tricorders were specific to the function of the officer. So, like if you design a landing party of, say, the standard Starfleet landing party usually is 3 tactical, an engineer, and a science officer, probably a medical officer of some sort. But you don't have to stay with that. That's just the basic landing party. Landing party can be anything you want, but you as the captain just need to know, like, what's the limitation of the landing party and what they're capable of. So, like, at a minimum you want a doctor, but then you have all the, if they're not a doctor science wise, then they're a scientist, and then they're specialized with certain abilities that they should have. And back in the day when the tricorders were pre-signed, they would have the different titles on there. And back in the old days, tricorders only had 4 powers, which mimicked the captain's 4 powers. And then, like the bridge officer, you only had 4 abilities. And then the way I design it is, depending on what my character actually is and my captain abilities are, then I staff officers accordingly. And then, so like on the PC side of the game, I know I'm flying in Excelsior, so my science officer is really flying a ship not designed for her, so she has challenges. So, but where science officers are different from engineers and tactical is only how they go about doing things. Science officers use skill and ability to do stuff, whereas engineers to some extent uses ability and skill, but they do it more in a mechanical engineering way of doing things. And engineers tend to have a lot of power in their character. And because of that, they can deal with things in a baseline sort of way, whereas science officers have to overcome that with skill. And so through their abilities, they buff or debuff and so forth. And then tactical people don't have the benefit of power like the engineer officer or the specialized skills that the science officer will have. And so they have to rely on technology and equipment. So how their variable or variation occurs in carrying multiple type of weapon systems, the different type of technologies that you apply to the mission. As an example, with like phaser systems, disruptor systems, plasma systems, Tetrion, they do different things that they affect. And with torpedoes, with the cannon system, you have the heavy dual cannons, which have a very focused concentration arc. And then as you go to the dual cannons, it gets a little bit wider arc. And then the main cannon has a 180 degree arc. And then the turret has a 360 degree firing arc. But they're designed for short. Anything under 5 kilometers, they're more effective at. And the closer you get to the target, the more effective the cannon. Whereas your beam weapons they're more effective at long range. They don't dissipate over distance. They only dissipate based on how much power you apply to them, right? So if you're one of the guys that like to fly around with maximum power set to weapon systems, you're going to be moving slower than well shit. And you'll slowly learn through experience that sometimes it doesn't pay to have your power focused into one area. Now, on the PC side of the game, you can actually vary the power of the ship in all the different, recall the mains, weapon, shield, movement, and auxiliary power. But you can set that to a limit where on the PS4 you don't have that ability. The only thing you have is the ability to change it from one of the 4. But it sort of works on the same principle. You just can't manually set it to what you want. Or on the PC, you can do that. Now, ideally, before we go on with the training here, one point I wanted to make with the torpedoes is that the torpedo usually is single fire, but with the skill of the tactical officer, you can have a spread, high yield, and then a different concentration of that. But also, the mine is basically the projectile version of the 360 degree firing arc that what a cannon or a beam weapon would have. Beam weapons are normally strategically placed on the ship to take advantage of a particular arc and so forth. Now here on the skill, one thing I would emphasize from a training level is you should train all your, say your tactical officer, bridge officers, you should buy all the manuals for that level before you progress him to from ensign to lieutenant. Then lieutenant, buy all the manuals. You don't have to do it all at one time. You can budget it out. So as you go do missions, they slowly get them, and then that way in the field you can change it out to what you need, and then eventually you learn what all the different powers do, and then so as you get your basic core bridge officers, tactical officer, engineer, and science officer, separate from your own captain, then you can add them more specific, so to more a specific role, but you can change it in the field. And then as you get your ship, it's going to have different, more than one bridge station. So like engineers will have more than one engineering station. Tactical ship, frigates, will have more than one tactical bridge officer stations, and then so forth. Science, the same way. And you have to then decide, you can train another officer to fit in that station. But if you go in different missions, then within each story you can change it out should you need to change it, because sometimes what you think, if you have like a generic setup, it may not be useful in what you're doing at the time. So you'll have to learn that as a captain, how to change, how to set your people. And I think, at least my own personal opinion, is that you should train all your officers in all their skills, especially the basic ones that aren't expensive. And then as they get into the more specialized skills, then you pick the specific ones that enhances your abilities for that ship. And then We'll go over specializations a little more later. This is the training officer, as I said before. I think I said it before. But he's located at our space dock, and I visit him regularly as I train my crew up. And as we're standardizing this in the role-playing series, you'll see that try not to get in a habit of where you're trying to do everything at one time. You don't need to do that. You can budget everything out, and especially when you're starting out young in your career, you need to have fun and build your captain. Take your time. The way the game is meant to be played is meant to be played an hour out of the day. Just like you watch a episode of Star Trek on TV, at least when I was growing up, Star Trek would come on at 5 in the evening, and then every night you went off on an adventure, Monday through Friday, and then you come back Monday and start all over again. And every now and then they'd have a Star Trek marathon on the weekends, usually when there was like a hurricane or bad weather or something would happen, and they had to interrupt the regular scheduled programming. They would show a Star Trek marathon as a alternative to like whatever was happening on the network television. So that's how the game is really meant to be played. And back in the old days when we were able to explore, and there weren't a lot of story episodes, and they were still having to make them, and they didn't really know where they wanted to take the game and the direction. But a great portion of the game were role players, and another portion of the game were PvPers, or what I call raiders. And a raider's different than a PvPer, but the PvP thing kind of went wayside. And most people knew that was kind of going to happen because most cryptic games don't really have extensive PvP. It exists in the game, but it's more of a just to have something to do. It's not really a competition or an esport type of setup. And that's really what it's for. And but the game itself is meant to be played an hour out of the day. You go through, you do your stuff. The duty officer stuff, it's really meant like when you log out for the evening, you want your crew, you send your crew off to do their stuff along with the admiral stuff. You send your fleet out to do stuff, and then when you go and come back in 24 hours, they'll be done. That's why there's a 20-hour, a lot of the missions are set at 20 hours, so if you go and come back in 24 hours, then that gives you a 4-hour gap, right, to come back. And that's really how the game is designed. But in the old days, when they had exploration missions, you could go out and randomly do that kind of stuff. But as they started putting more episodes into the game, exploration missions kind of went away. And now that we're around the 10-year anniversary of the game, they've built up a nice system of stories that you could go through start to finish every story, follow it all the way through, and then cycle back through, just like when you're watching Star Trek on television, whether it's the original series or the Next Generation or whatever incarnation that you're following. You do that with the game too. You follow along just an hour out of the day, and you can get a lot done. And one of the things that we're hoping to show with our video series is that with all the games we play, just playing an hour out of the day, managing your time, you can actually progress pretty rapidly, and you don't have to kill yourself or drive yourself crazy trying to win the game, because the game's not going to end. And that's not really the goal. Is to the game is to give you something to do out an hour out of your day and have a nice entertaining time. And that's really what the game is about. You go off on an adventure an hour out of the day, and you have fun. If you have a solo RP session, which most of your sessions probably will be, and then if people want to follow along, join you, you can do that too. And we're going to demonstrate at least the way we like to do it through the video series here. and both on the PC and PS4. Now this video is more concentrated on the PS4 because we wanted to contrast and compare what we're doing on the PC side. So you see these characters aren't as developed. On the PC side, the characters have been around 10 years, most of them, 10 years or so, so they had a lot of development, whereas these characters are really just early in their career. Even though this character is now an admiral, she still doesn't have a lot of resources in. You don't have to go out and get those resources in one day. You can take your time and build yourself. Right now, I've kind of learned through the game, through my experience, that a ship needs around 2 million energy credits to operate smoothly. And that's what I'm emphasizing right now. Training up the crew, getting them fitted with gear, getting our research and development department going. That's going to be crucial, especially in the later parts of the game. And you will see that development here with each episode, and then along with the crew. And I would encourage you not to go out and try to buy every little resource, like all the training manuals at one time. Just get the ones you really need to get going, and slowly over time as you come back, you progress the officer accordingly. They don't have to be built in one day, and even if you realize, man, I don't really have that skill, when you're out in the field, it's okay. You don't need it at that. You can adapt to whatever you're doing, and then add it. Now, what we're looking for here is on the PC side. One of these terminals gives you the because we came from the 23rd century in our plot, and there's a place where you go to get the what is it, the environmental suits. You get the free ones, but I haven't located where that is on the PS4, assuming that it's there. So every now and then I go check one of these councils in case I missed it. But I have yet to locate that council. On the PC, it's when you walk in, it's standing right next to the guy who's the temporal coordinate guy. It's a council, and then you click all the free stuff that you've acquired over the years, and you can keep going back to get it. Coming up to the final parts of this video, which a lot of stuff that we did in this video mainly was upkeeping, but it's important in role-playing games, whether it's a tabletop role-playing game or a computer-derived one. You have action time, you have upkeep time, you have some downtime in a game, and all those things are important for building your character. Here's the temporal guy. I came to check him to see if he has what I was looking for. He didn't.
Greetings. How can I assist you today? Or in the future?
So, nothing really. So, I decided to go on with it. Get on. One thing I'm doing is try to get in a habit where we're building enough dilithium for a week, and then I haven't decided on if we're going to do weekly installments of converting it to dilithium or monthly. I reason that when you buy a lifetime subscription, Cryptic gives you a 500 Zen that you get every month, and I assume through the free-to-play, if you follow the 8,000 dilithium a day, I think roughly after a month, when you convert your dilithium over, you should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 Zen a month, I think, is if you casually play the game. It's nothing, but it's quite a bit of Zen, a lot of dilithium. And it's the Zen and dilithium, along with Neverwinter, where you have Astro Diamonds. That's really where your bread and butter is in the game, and that's how you make money. And if you have free money on the side, you donate $20 to Cryptic, and you can get your little premium payout once a month. And that can be useful. up here to upgrade my uniform. One of my goals is to get her another uniform slot, and then slowly acquire enough funds. It'll probably take a year of grinding to get the ship we want, because it's like 5,000 Zen, so that's quite a bit of money. It's going to take us a while, but our first goal is to get our engineering energy credits up, and then get our research department going, and then from that we'll be able to generate dilithium and salvage stuff. If you're getting loot in the field, the real value in that, especially if you have a good research and development department, is the salvage. It's worth a lot of money, and then you take that salvage and convert it to products in the game, which can derive energy credits. And then once you have a good system of energy credits, that allows you to do duty officer missions and admiralty missions, which enable you to generate dilithium. And through the dilithium, you can use that to get Zen. Zen is the thing you need. That's the most valuable thing other than dilithium in the game. And that allows you to develop the character over time. And now, although it looks like I'm going through and scanning all these things, what I'm doing is trying to get to the advanced options, and for some reason the graphic goes ahead of the thing, so you can't read it, and it doesn't always advance it. So that's, although it appears I was trying to scan through the different outfits there, I wasn't really doing that. I was trying to get to the advanced options, and it wasn't cooperating. Right now I only have 2, so we got to get 250 Zen to unlock the uniforms. Another uniform slot, which we got the beachwear stuff, and if you get the beachwear separate, when you go back to some of your ships where you have an interior, you can actually wear that in the interior. I've only found a couple of ships that have. Now in the PC you have all ships come with 3 levels of interior. Some of the newer ships don't. They only come with the bridge, and everything's sort of in that one little spot. But most of the ships have the bridge, the main deck, and engineering deck, and then so you can kind of walk around, and there's functionality within that. And the Romulan ships are the only ships that I've seen from a free point of view that does that from the get-go. The Klingon and Federation don't have, they only have the bridge interiors. So I'm quickly going to acquire the original series interiors, because that's what I use on the PC side for all my ships. And it's a pretty cool one, because you have the Jeffrey tubes, and it has all the stations, the medical center. It has a shuttle bay, and you can go to your transporter room where the shuttle guy is located and switch out. So when you want to switch out from your ship to your shuttle, in a role-playing sort of way of doing it, that's how you would do it. And then you can do it from sector space too, but role player, you kind of want to do it from the stage. They spent all that money building the stage, you might as well use it. And that's the great thing about role playing, is you can enjoy the game. You don't have to fly around like an idiot in combat. You can actually take your time in combat and work through things, and we're going to demonstrate that And I did that in more recent videos where I've been slowly, even on the pickup groups, slowing down so we see from the video perspective, since I'm going to be narrating it, narrating the video, you can see you don't have to fly around like in a Star Wars game where they have all these high speed chases and stuff. Star Trek really isn't that kind of a game. Star Trek is designed, even if you watch the television show, they slowly go through things. They don't run through the set. Star Wars, the reason why, one of the reasons why they did that in the original, the New Hope, was with the limitations of their special effects. You had to quickly go through the movies, so if you're not paying attention to stuff, you don't notice things, and so it sort of masks the limitation of the special effects, and they get you in a hurry. Whereas in modern moviegoer now, they've seen a lot of that stuff now, so they sort of absorb it in a much slower way. And Star Trek really is designed to take your time and play it. You don't have to. All the combat in this game is more designed from an adventure game way and from a role player. They're more of an entertainment and not really a test of skill. There's some skill level in this game, but it's not anything that's too difficult. Even in the epic difficulty, it's not difficult. Now, I play on advanced difficulty because it allows you to have, say you get injured in a story, it allows you to go through, and the character will eventually heal on their own. But except if they get critically wounded, then you have to go to a medical center. You have to have the critical component or critical regenerators in the field, which they drop in the field. But that little dot alarm is telling it's 10 p.m. now. But coming up on the end, we're 57 minutes in. And this is a multi-part, so we're coming up on the end of part 2. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in part 2. Chronicles of Earth Night is made possible by our Patreon supporters who donate their real-world money to our endeavors. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell when you'd like to know when all our new videos are released on YouTube. This was Star Trek Online, presented to you by Chronicles of Earth 9. Be sure to catch us on Twitch at Agamemnon Games on Twitch, live from midnight to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday through Tuesday.